Okay, well listen, why don't we get started? My name is David Wilkins. I'm the faculty director of the Center on the Legal Profession, and we have a kind of a recurring speaker series where we try to bring interesting people to campus who are doing interesting things. And it's often great if we could get people who are doing interesting things who also have a connection with Harvard Law School so that they can also serve as a kind of role model for students about some of the things you might also do with your careers. But rarely do we have the opportunity to bring somebody who's so interesting, who also has a connection with Harvard, who's built such a varied career across so many platforms as our guest today, Areva Martin. I'm very proud of Areva, I'll just say up front, because Areva was my student. We've all both agreed not to say what year that was, because it's, you know, it's kind of a mutual deterrence pact. But I am gonna do a little bit of a conversation with Areva to just kind of give you guys an opportunity to get to know her a little bit, for her to introduce herself. So rather than give her a long introduction, I'm gonna let her introduce herself. I think she's known to many of you. You've seen her on whether it's CNN or Good Morning America or The Doctors or many other platforms where she has been involved. And she speaks and writes about a very broad range of issues, many of which are right in the headlines today. But that's only a part of what she does. And so we're going to try to give Areva an opportunity to talk a little bit more. And of course, for those of you who really want to know more, we really encourage you to buy her book, which is being sold in the corner here, Make It Rain, How to Use the Media to Revolutionize Your Business and Brand. She's a terrific writer, a terrific thinker, and I'll just be proud to say a terrific person. So please welcome Areva Martin. So,
It's always a pleasure to be back at the law school. I had an opportunity to come back for the Black Alumni Conference 2 years ago, so it's always great to be back.
yeah, this is what you can say when you've been gone for a while, and we hope all of you will have fonder and fonder reflections. What are you? Oh, is your mic on? Yeah, only just because this is being recorded. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Derek. So listen, let me start out this way. I won't say what year, but you did graduate from Harvard Law School. Yes. And as I remember, you followed a relatively traditional path when you first got out. That is, tell us a little bit about what you did when you first got out of law school.
Yeah, we were talking in your office about when I was at the law school, the biggest thing that my classmates and I that we wanted to do, we wanted to go off to a big law firm and eventually make partner. And we flew all over the country during the summertime, or leading up to summer, to get internships at law firms. And the goal was to go there and work hard and make ourselves known to the powers that be, ultimately get a job offer, stay there 7 to 10 years, and hopefully make partner. Well, none of that happened for me. Well, some of it happened.
Yeah, you got the job.
I got the job. I, out of law school, worked at a corporate law firm, Wall Street firm that had a Los Angeles office, because I relocated to Los Angeles, and I stayed probably 2 years, which I think is, talking to Barbara, about the average for women of color in big law firms. And after my 2-year stint, I had to figure out what to do, and for me that was going into private practice. So I left the big law firm after 2 years. I went into my own practice, and I was building a business. I became more of an entrepreneur than even a lawyer, because I had to build a practice from scratch. That meant working 14, 16-hour days, because I was the lawyer actually in court trying cases, but I was also the business developer. I was the human resources manager. I was the office manager. I was the event planner. I was everything.
Cook and bottle washer.
All of that. But happily all of that, because it was something that I was creating, and I was representing the clients that I wanted to represent and building the kind of practice that I wanted. All of that changed, though, for me, as it does for many women, particularly when we start our families, get married, have kids. I'll fast forward. I did that. I got married, had 2 kids, and then I had a 3rd child. And it was my 3rd child, his birth, that really changed my entire career. My 3rd child, who is a boy, a young a teenager. His name is Marty. He was diagnosed after 2 years old, after he was 2, with autism. And that really changed everything about my career, because now I had to become this fierce advocate for Marty. I had to navigate the systems of care. I had to figure out how to get him the best medical and educational and services, and it wasn't easy. If you have a child with special needs, the services available are often fragmented, not available, equally in all communities. But that really changed everything about my career. 14, 16-hour days just weren't possible given the commitment that it took to be a mother of a special needs child.
That's such an important story for people to hear, and particularly, I would imagine when this was happening, if you think about the resources today, when you were talking about your son was born, there were even fewer. But that, in a way, makes where you are today even more remarkable. So where did the media part begin to come in your life?
Yeah, what happened with after Marty's birth, I went through this reflective period. Do I leave the law altogether, which a lot of women I know in particular think about, and a lot of people do end up leaving the profession. And it was a mentor of mine, another Harvard Law School graduate, who I had connected with in Los Angeles. Her name is Caprice Collins. And Caprice said, no, you've worked too hard. You've built equity in this firm. And too often African-American business owners end up selling their businesses or leaving their businesses, and they don't, it impacts our community in a negative way. So she encouraged me to stay in my firm, which was the best advice anyone could have given me. So I needed money. And I couldn't keep billing hours. So a friend of mine worked in the entertainment business, and we often talked about what she did and the concept of residual income. So it was her getting me thinking about how do I monetize what it is that I do and can do that doesn't require me to bill hours. Because as a lawyer, that's what I was doing. I was building the practice, and I did work as a plaintiff's lawyer, so I had a lot of contingency cases. But at the end of the day, I didn't make money if I wasn't applying myself as a lawyer. But there was this thing that I could do and make money while I was asleep called residual income. So every time somebody buys this book, guess what? I'm making money, and I'm just, I'm not applying myself, as you do as a lawyer. So that got me thinking about how to change my career. But my real break in media came, I was representing a group of families who had children with autism who had been abused in the classroom, and I got an invitation from the Dr. Phil show to bring those families onto the show. He wanted to interview them. This case had gotten some national attention. It was the first time a teacher was being prosecuted criminally for abusing nonverbal kids with autism in the state of Nevada. These kids were in Las Vegas. And I, as their lawyer, was invited on with them to the show, and the show went really well. The families were great. They were passionate. They shared their stories. They talked about how the impact of the teacher abusing their kids had impacted them and their lives. And it just so happened after the taping of that show, they were taping a second show, and the second show was on Dog the Bounty Hunter. Anybody watch cable TV? No, Dog the Bounty Hunter. So several years ago, Dog the Bounty Hunter was caught on a tape using the N-word. I can see you nodding, so you remember this huge thing that was happening. And the big question was, should his show be taken off the air? Should he be fired? Should the network cut ties with him? And so the Phil show was doing that story. And they had a panel of men, T.D. Jakes, I can't think of the other guys, but it was like 5 men who were going to be debating, should Dog be fired for using the N-word? They didn't have a woman. And they said, Areva, wow, your first show went so well. Would you stick around and be the female voice on this Dog the Bounty Hunter? And I didn't know the story. So I'm like, sure I will, but can somebody tell me about Dog the Bounty Hunter? So they give me a stack of like articles and everything that had been in the news. And one good thing about being a Harvard-trained lawyer is that you're a quick study. So I had to, in the time difference between one show and the second show, read up on Dog the Bounty Hunter, form an opinion about whether I think he should be fired or not, and then be able to articulate that opinion with this group of men who were the original panel for this show. And it went well. And the producer said, wow, you know, we loved having you on, and keep in touch. If you have other cases you want to bring to the show, we'll contact you about other shows that we're doing where we think you can add some input. And that was the beginning. Wow. And when that show, my show with the parents, aired, the response that I got was unbelievable. I had people emailing me and texting me and, you know, sending me messages. I have a child with autism. You know, I have a disabled family member. You know, can you help me? And these were people all over the country. And of course, you know, I was licensed, or I am licensed to practice only in the state of California, but it really dawned on me that despite the work I was doing individually as a civil rights lawyer, and I had, as my son's with my son's diagnosis, I did two things. I changed my practice to start representing families who had, you know, disability rights lawsuits, so I got heavily involved in the litigation of disability rights cases, and I started a nonprofit around autism. So I couldn't represent those families who were calling me from other states, and it appeared to me, it was very clear to me, as much satisfaction and gratification I got from representing one family in a disability rights lawsuit, it was nothing compared to the millions of people that I was able to reach in that show and educate about their rights and what they could do if they had someone with disabilities. And that's when I would say, the beginning of my career in media.
But what's so interesting about what you did, Areva, is you then become, you know, extremely successful. You get invited on more and more. You're regular on Dr. Phil. You start to get invited on other shows, speaking on a broad range of issues. One might have thought, given everything you just said, you would have then just moved full-time into media and stopped being a lawyer and, you know, stopped your law firm. But that's not what you did. And why?
Because everybody needs about 9 sources of income today. You just do. I mean, I live in Los Angeles. It's incredibly expensive. I have 3 kids. You know, it's a very expensive lifestyle. I do a lot of political fundraising. I raise millions of dollars for charities. I give lots of money to charities, and it's just a different world. It's a very different world than the world that I experienced graduating from law school, where you went to a law firm and you had one job and that was it. And if you talk to most people that do what I do, they will tell you I do a ton of public speaking. I told you I just left a conference in Spokane where I talked to 400 CEOs about sexual harassment in the workplace, a paid speech. So I give, a source of my income is from paid speeches. I write. This is my 3rd book that I've published. I monetize my social media through endorsements as a brand ambassador. I have a law firm that my husband, who's also a Harvard Law School graduate, runs. So we still, you know, very active in the legal community. I run a nonprofit, and so I don't think there are many people who probably just have one job. I mean, I'm sure there are, but there are lots of people like me who have tons of ways that we generate income.
So talk a little bit about that, and one of the key concepts, and again, I urge you all to buy the book, not just because it's also a way of reciprocal income for Areva, but also because you're going to learn a ton about it. And one of the central ideas you talk about there is building a brand. And if you think about it, she's doing so many different things, but you begin to see how they all sort of fit together. And I wonder if you could say a little bit about that for the students, about kind of both what you mean by that and how you came to this idea and what it means to try to build a brand today.
So great question, David. So as I was transitioning in my career, I went and met with, I guess you would call a life coach, a professional career coach, to help me kind of, you know, carve the path that I was thinking of as I was transitioning. And one of the things she said to me was, you are a lawyer. So the thing that anybody's probably going to want to first hear from you is some kind of legal analysis. Tell us what's happening around this case. I told David I'm on Stormy watch now. So I spend most of my days talking about Stormy Daniels and what that means legally for the president, and, you know, how unprecedented it is to have a president involved in litigation with, porn star and et cetera. So this woman, this coach told me, start there. And so when I talk to people about building a brand, I say to them, what is it that you already do? What is it, where do you already have some level of expertise or lived experiences or job-related experiences? And then ultimately is your passion. Because by now, my son, I'm becoming an autism advocate, not by choice, but by circumstances. And so I'm saying to this coach, yeah, I'm a lawyer and I love being a lawyer, but what I'm really passionate about is helping children. And I want to help these families who have kids with special needs. And she's like, fine, Areva, you'll do that later. But right now, we've got to focus on building you, getting you exposure as a lawyer, because that's what people are going to want to talk to you about first. So I tell people, start with something, that which you are already probably an expert in, and then you can always build your brand from there. So for me, my brand is advocacy. I grew up poor in a housing project in North St. Louis, so everything I do is about helping underserved communities, being a voice for the voiceless. So in every opportunity I get, whether it's talking about Stormy Daniels, I'm going to figure out a way to talk about women who don't have a voice, women who, the low-wage worker who's not the celebrity that you see as the face of Me Too or Time's Up, but those low-income workers who've been exposed to and subjected to sexual harassment for years and don't have an opportunity to come on television and talk about it. So how this movement is important to them. So your brand gets woven into all the work that you do. When I'm writing, when I'm speaking, writing a book, on CNN, on Dr. Phil, whatever it is, you can always count on me to figure out that which helps elevate, lift, and support people who don't have a voice, because that's what I'm passionate about. That's my background. That's how I got to Harvard. And beyond was because somebody stood up for me. Somebody was a voice for kids like me who were growing up poor in a housing project. So that's how I give back, and that's what my brand has become. So when people call me and they want me to be on a show or talk about an issue, they say to me, we want a strong voice because we know you're going to stand up, for, you're going to level the playing field for the person who's been subjected to something. So your brand is what you're passionate about. It's what people come to know you for. You become a trusted advisor. People look to you for, your reliable source of income. That's how I define brand. And branding is, and I talk about it a lot in the book, is really different from self-promotion. It's not, hey, look at me, I'm so great. It's not that at all. It's developing relationships where people trust you, they know you, you're engaging with them across multiple channels. And today, when I speak of media and use the term media, it's not just television, because media is so broad, so expansive. It's what we do on our phones, it's streaming channels, it's social media, so many different opportunities for people to get into media because there's this insatiable need for content. I mean, from Snapchat to LinkedIn, they all have online, shows. They all are looking for content and looking for people who have expertise to deliver that content, to provide them with that content.
But Areva, we also know about the media that it can often be, and you know more than anybody of what you've been talking about, a very difficult place for women, and particularly for women of color. And I wonder kind of how you have been able to navigate that, and while still being able to build this kind of strong brand.
No, you're right, David. And I tell people all the time, I think I experience more gender bias and sexual discrimination on the basis of my sex than I do even on the basis of race. Wow. And so many of the rooms that I'm in and the situations that I find myself in, being a woman, and sometimes being the only woman in those situations, can be challenging. But we face those challenges, we stand up to them, we stand tall in them. And that's what I love about the Me Too movement, because I think women are embracing not just the concept of safe workplaces and eliminating sexual harassment, but the concept of the imbalance of power and how much power we actually do have. This tour that I'm doing for the book, I've connected with women I went to high school with, women I went to college with, who are in positions of power, and sometimes we forget that we do have power. And if we are in a law firm or if we are at a university, what are we doing to reach back to help women who are coming, behind us, women who are just starting out in their careers? And we all have an obligation, I believe, to do something, to mentor those women, to open those doors, not fall prey to the only me concept where you want to be the only person that's successful in a particular environment. I live by the theory of abundance, that there's enough for all of us, that your blessing, your success doesn't in any way impede mine, that if you're successful, I can be successful too. And if I can be successful, then I can help people in my environment be successful. And that's what I live by. That's what I would say has served me well in an environment where oftentimes people are super competitive, and women, unfortunately, don't always get the same opportunities to advance. And there's still a tremendous amount of sexual and gender bias that prevent women from advancing in certain ways. We're always looking for male allies. I said to those CEOs, don't just say you're with us. Don't just say you support the Me Too movement and you support Time's Up. What do you do in those boardrooms, in those C-suites, when decisions are being made about who gets promoted and what the salary structure looks like? That's where we need our male allies standing up for women and making sure that the same opportunities we give our boys, we're giving to our girls. Because face it, are you going to invest in years of college for your daughter only to send her into a workplace where she's going to be discriminated against and held back because of her gender? That's just, that doesn't even make good business sense for you as a father. So I try to appeal to men on that level. Forget about me. You don't know me, but what about your own daughter? Your daughter that you're investing thousands and thousands of dollars in for education. Don't you want her to have an equal playing field?
So Reva, I'm going to give this great audience an opportunity to ask questions, but while they think about them, I want to ask you kind of this final preliminary question, because many of them are students or maybe at the beginning of their careers, young professionals. And what advice now, looking back, you told us wonderfully at the beginning that you were kind of like everybody else. You followed the same path. You sort of wanted the same things. You didn't really have much of an opportunity even to think about this. There was nothing in your background that suggested, oh, I'm going to end up being sort of somebody who's putting together a multimedia, multi-platform career. What advice for young people in terms of thinking about themselves as a brand even now and beginning to do things that'll help them to build that over time?
Yeah, great question. If you have a computer and touch it, you're a brand. Because you're creating a digital footprint every time you go on that computer. And we've been seeing that all week with this Cambridge Analytics story that's playing out in Facebook's failure to protect all of our personal data. So if you're on any website, if you're on any social media channel, you have created a digital footprint. And the question is, you define your brand or someone else will for you. So, and it doesn't start when you get a job. It doesn't start when you make partner or make CEO. It starts now. And that wasn't the case when you and I were together in this law school at the time that we're not talking about.
Right.
There was this period at this law school when I was your student that, yes, we had computers. It wasn't that long ago.
Yes.
We had computers. There was technology.
Yeah.
But everything we did was not as significant then as it is today. So I say to people, start thinking about, what is it you want people to know about you? And I was talking to a group of lawyers at a law firm in New York 2 days ago, and I told the group, I said, if you approach me about a job, either for my law firm or my nonprofit or just in any, you do anything, you just make any entree to me, I'm going to Google you. Don't send me your resume. I'm going to Google you. What are you going to find? And this woman said to me, oh, I didn't think about that. And she said she Googled herself during the talk and she couldn't find anything. And I said, if I don't find anything, I'm going to be a little suspicious. Like, where have you been? Have you been under a rock? So the question is, what does someone find when they Google you? Google yourself. I mean, do it while we're sitting here. Is it positive information? Is it negative information? And I tell you, if it's zero information, people are, it's almost impossible not to have something come up on Google about you if you've ever written an article, you've ever, like I said, you've done anything on social media. So I tell people, think about your brand. You probably, if you're a student, you've had somebody in high school come and tell you about cursing or, pictures of promiscuous pictures and things you don't want to do on social, and all that's true. But in addition to those things, you want to be creating content, because you write an article, you contribute to an article, you give a quote for an article, all those things become a part of your digital footprint. And sometimes people think, I don't have the ability, I don't have the time, I don't have the money, but it's so abundant to us. Literally, you can go and start your own blog. I mean, we've seen people grow blogs to millions and millions of followers that they then monetize with advertisers. So there's no excuse for people in terms of not getting into this digital age, because the train has really left the station. So I just tell people, jump in where you are, start writing about what you're passionate about, on your social media channels. I'm on social media pretty much all day, all the time, talking about issues that I care about, issues that are important to me, whether it's legal issues or issues around disability rights, issues around women or children. And your messaging should be consistent. I should be able to go to your page. I tell people, if you go to my page and you can't figure out who I am and what I do, then there's something wrong with my social. And that's really how you start to build a brand that's consistent. And if your brand is, if you are the travel, think of Anthony Bourdain. I mean, perfect example of someone whose brand is so crystallized. If we think of travel, we think of Anthony Bourdain. Think of someone like Elon Musk. If you think of hip, cool, hot car, you're going to think of Elon Musk. We probably can't even name the CEO of any other car manufacturers. I mean, we just probably can't. So there are people like that who have built these amazing brands. And then the great thing about your brand, and I talk about it in the book, is for me, it's allowed me to do those things that I'm most passionate about, which are working on behalf of underserved families who have kids with autism. I've raised millions of dollars for autism, been able to do huge celebrity events because of the work that I do in other areas. And we talked about this, David, that the world is different. It's not you're either a corporate lawyer or you're a public interest lawyer or you're in-house attorney. Your personal is your public today. So you can be all of those things, and you probably will be lots of things, and they're not mutually exclusive.
Well, that's a terrific segue to say to people in the audience, this is an incredible opportunity to talk to somebody who's done just about everything that you might want to do. Yes, please.
Hi.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, there are little, I don't know, are the mics on the table working? Yeah, okay, good, thank you. So that way everybody could hear the questions.
Hi, I'm Cameron
Hi.
Clark. Thanks so much for coming to speak with us. Welcome back to Harvard. I had two questions. You can answer either or both as time allows. The first one is, how important did you think it was to have your own personal firm or personal business to be able to navigate and develop your own brand? And then secondly, what specific connections and resources did you find in LA and in the West Coast, and how were you able to leverage those on the East Coast as well?
So the first question, I don't think that, and I know lots of people who have big brands and they work in companies. These women that I was talking to in New York, this group, they were, a lot of them were in the financial services businesses, and they told me that they, because of their companies, because of their, the industry that they worked in, that they weren't able to develop brands outside of that company. But I said to them, developing your brand, you can develop a brand within your company. If you're trying to get a promotion, if you're trying to advance in your company, the people in your company need to know who you are, and you have to stand for something, and you want to become known for something even within that company. So being a brand or building a brand doesn't just exist for entrepreneurs and people who are self-employed. I was self-employed long before I would say I started working on even developing my brand. It just happened to be my career path. But I think people within companies, because when your CEO is making decisions about who they are going to promote within that company, you want to be that go-to person that everybody knows, that you're the go-to person on this particular issue in this company. You've written about it, you've talked about it, and you're that trusted, reliable source within that organization. That is going to serve you well even within a large corporate structure. So in your second question about connections, I'm like the ultimate networker, I say. I was the business developer for my law firm, and one key thing I would say about being a great networker, which most people fail to do, is follow up. If you say to me, let's do lunch, we're doing lunch. It's not just a casual kind of cliche, but 99% of the people that say let's do lunch are never doing lunch. One thing I do now, people write to me all the time, will you mentor me? Send me an email and tell me specifically what you want to do. You know how many of those emails I get? Very few. So I can weed out tons of people, because if I give them a little assignment, they can't even follow that assignment, we're not going to be good mentor partners, because you're not going to like me because I work way too hard and you don't work hard enough. So we're not going to work well together. So a part of it is there's so many people already in your network. How are you leveraging those relationships? And what I find is most people don't. They have everything they need already in their personal network. A lot of women in particular, the way we're raised, we're raised to be more humble, more meek, not going to serve you well in the business world. Did anybody here get an invitation to this event from me on LinkedIn? Yeah. Okay. Thank you for coming. So a part of me selling this book, and people always ask me about writing a book. Writing a book is really easy. Selling a book, and thanks to all of you, this book on its debut day, which was Tuesday, March 20th, #1, 3 categories, Amazon, #1 bestseller, top 15 business books on Barnes & Noble, a whole hell of a lot of work, and wearing out my knees praying. So, but I wasn't really active on LinkedIn until August, September, as I'm meeting with my publishers looking for how are you going to sell this book, which is what publishers, all they care about. How are you going to sell this book? And where is your audience? I had a huge following on Facebook and Twitter, but most people who follow me because of my social justice, civil rights work. The book, to be marketable, had to be broader. So this is a book for activists, it's a book for advocates like myself, but it had to fit into a category, because when you sell a book, the publishers want to know, where are you going to find it on the bookshelves? And they're like, Areva, books for advocates, not so much. So you need to broaden your audience. So you're an entrepreneur, you've been one all of your professional career, so broaden the book out to make it a business book. Business books sell better. There's a huge identified business market, entrepreneurs. So that's why Revolutionize Your Brand, your business and your brand is a part of the title. They looked at my social and said, we like it, but you don't really have a big presence on LinkedIn. We want you to grow your presence. So from August until now, I literally grew my presence on LinkedIn and have 21,000 followers. And how did I do that? By finding those of you that are here that I invited, not being shy, because if you're on social media says to me, you want to be connected. If you don't, then you shouldn't be there. So you can get my invitation and click trash, that's okay. But a lot of you got that invitation and you showed up. A lot of people got the invitation and they bought the book. I had to get 50 reviews on Amazon in one day, even though Amazon hadn't even shipped the book to people that pre-ordered it. They didn't, that's just business. So I had to reach out to people and prod them, because everybody's busy, and my priorities are not the priorities of everybody in this room, and I do get that. But I had to get 50 people to go on Amazon and write a review. So I say that a long-winded answer to get back to your original question is, I already had so many relationships that I built at Harvard. My lawyer is Princeton, Harvard. She and I were classmates. She has a son on the autism spectrum too. She saw the work I was doing around autism. She came to me to help her navigate some services for her son. And I said, okay, I'll do it under the condition that you join the board of this nonprofit. And she did. And then as I started getting more TV deals and doing more contracts, she's an entertainment lawyer, so she became my lawyer. So now she's on my board and she's my entertainment attorney. So you have people in your personal network already. The question is, what are you going to do with those people?
So for those of you who are still students here, the best opportunity, you've already heard her give a few examples, and I will say Areva has been one of the great students I've had who've kept in touch with me, which I always have really enjoyed, but you have such an opportunity here to build the most incredible network in the world, and to your point about East Coast, West Coast, it'd be global, right? Because there are people here from all over the world. You just have to take advantage of it, and then, as she said, keep in touch with people. And it's easier and easier today because of social media and all the ways in which, young people can keep in touch in ways that we didn't have before. Other questions? So here and then here. Go ahead, please. Yeah, I think if you push the little button thingy.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay,
Perfect.
thank you. So my question is, when you're initially establishing your brand, trying to figure out what that is, and then how to expand from there, not everybody is natural at networking. Do you have any advice for people who are kind of uncomfortable stepping outside and really engaging in that, both in person and through social media in a global world today?
That's a great question, and you're right. And a lot of people are just more naturally, shy. But that's what's the beauty of social media is. Like, rejection, if you say to me, no, you're not coming, which most people, if they're rejecting you on social media, they just don't respond. So it's not nearly as crushing as to be asking David in his face to do something and him to say no. I mean, that can hurt, right? Or if you've ever done sales on a telephone where you've called people and either they hang up on you or they're rude to you. But social is so easy because in some ways it's so impersonal. It can get to be very personal. But I think that's a place I would start for someone who says they're naturally shy, is you can engage in conversations and do things on social media. And I think the fact that it is impersonal and that you're not in someone's face can soften what may be initial rejection. And the beauty is there's so many people, even if one person rejects you, you're going to find and connect with people that your message will resonate with. And I talk in the book about how do you find what I call your tribe, because everyone isn't trying to connect with every person, in the world. And there are, hundreds of millions of people on social media. And that's what's changed too about the media. It used to be we had 4 or 5 big networks. Now there's so many. There are superstars, literally, like on Instagram, that my daughter Morgan follows, that I wouldn't even begin to know their names. CNN, MSNBC, there are people that see me on CNN who've never seen me on Dr. Phil, don't even know I appear on Dr. Phil, because the people that watch Dr. Phil aren't always typically the people that watch CNN. So the channels and communications now are so niche. People, who are on Snapchat probably aren't on LinkedIn. But that's okay, because there are millions of people on all of these different sites. So I would tell you, if you're kind of shy, start interacting and engaging. Friend me. I'll start talking to you. I'll introduce you to people in my social network, and that's how social goes. It just grows from there.
Terrific. So up here, and then Betsy, yeah.
First of all, thanks for coming.
So if you could push your little button,
Yeah, sorry.
just so it's easier for people to hear.
Well, first, I thought it was very interesting you said about Googling yourself, because my father's name is my name. So if somebody were to Google me, I would look a lot better than I would otherwise. So maybe that's a good thing. But I guess the question I had was, well, maybe some people in this room are thinking about starting their own business right out of law school or wherever they are in life, thinking about doing that. What were you thinking when you were starting your firm? What was something you learned on the way that you kind of thought, I wish I knew this when I had started and I didn't have to go through the learning process?
Oh, that's a great question. So I thought starting a law firm, the hardest thing was going to be getting clients. That ended up being the easiest thing. The hardest thing was managing people. I thought everybody was going to be as enthusiastic and as hardworking as I was. I said, if I come to work early, I stay to 10, 11, I thought everybody was going to work that way. not the way of the world. And as a woman, I spent a lot of time, and this happens to a lot of women leaders, and Barb will attest to this for me, I wanted to be liked. I bought so many Tiffany gifts for people. I bought big, what was then floor model televisions for people as they were getting married and getting engaged. I went to baby showers, I went to weddings, I went to birthday parties. I was just the gift giver, trying to get my employees to like me. Wrong. In business, you want to be respected, not liked. It's not high school. It's not a popularity contest. If you haven't been to prom queen, get over it. Work is not the place to aspire to that. And I wasted a lot of time. And people took advantage of me. I walked, I tell everybody this, I was a natural business developer. I walked millions of dollars in the front door of my law firm and then walked out the back door from poor performance. And for me, as not an experienced manager, being able to hold people accountable. So that's what I wish I knew. I wish someone had told me that, particularly as a female boss, and I was a very young female boss, that being liked was not important in business. It's far more important to be respected. And I wish people had told me the human factor, human beings, managing people, talent is the most important aspect of any business. I made some corrections. Now I don't have those issues. I tell people when I hire you, this is what I am, this is who I am, this is what I expect. You decide if you want this job. You don't want to work hard, you want to be held accountable, not the job for you. And that is tough because particularly as women, again, you know, we're nurturers. We want to be liked. And I was spent way too much time counseling people, hours. Their men problems, their kid problems, their money problems. You can't walk probably by the office of a male partner and see someone sitting there telling them about, you know, how they just got dumped. But I would literally be at work at 9, 10 o'clock at night, not working on the firm, but listening to people's personal problems. And I'm a nice person, and I like it, and I will still listen to your problems, but you know, I had to learn to set boundaries. Yeah. Learn that word, boundaries, because people will waste a whole lot of your time.
Betsy.
Okay, you guys have to buy some books.
Yes.
I have to stop and give you
So-
that like commercial. So I will stay here until whenever,
Okay.
but my publisher will kill me if I come and do a talk.
So
and
we
don't show
promise
some
that
books.
we're going to have time and for.
I want to
we're-
sign some books. I want to do some
Yeah.
social media, and I know the students have to leave at a certain time, so I'm going to take one more question, and then I will stick around for people who don't have to run to class. But I want to do this great shot with some students, so I would just ask after I answer this question if some of you could come down because we are doing this Make It Rain shot. So,
Go ahead, Betsy. Yeah.
have I been calling you Barbara the whole time?
That's all right.
And your name is Betsy?
I go by both.
Yeah,
Okay,
she
good.
It's
So,
Betsy, I'm sorry. Correct the record, Betsy.
talking a lot about the sorts of things that business school students learn, either because they came to business school solely to meet other people in business school or because they are taught these things. So what have you learned? Perhaps what will people who have less of a natural ability and are more linear thinkers like lots of us, that you wish you had been taught here, or here, which are thought of for the most part by lawyers.
Yeah.
Who don't have business minds necessarily as soft skills.
Yes.
That have clearly been the hard skills for you. What would you like the law school to have done for you that might have accelerated it or might have made it better and easier for somebody not like you?
Yeah, I think the law school could have given students a better picture of the trajectory of your career. So we spent a lot of time being courted by and being impressed with and targeting working for big firms. And now David has done the studies, Betsy has done the studies, and we know that the majority of lawyers that graduate from these prestigious law schools aren't going to end up. Now there will be partners at firms, and we have some great partners. I'm going to be talking downtown tomorrow to a group of lawyers. So partnership is not out the picture, it's still very much attainable for some lawyers. And I don't want to suggest that people shouldn't aspire to be a partner in a law firm, because it's a great profession. But the reality is most of the lawyers who graduate won't be. So I wish the law school had spent more time talking to us about what happens in your careers after that 3 to 5 year window where most people end up out of those law firms. Because I think a lot of people don't know what to do. They don't know how to transition. And one thing that happens when you leave the big law firm, oftentimes you don't really have skills that are transferable to mid-size or small law firms. So if you spent 3 to 5 years writing memos and then you come and apply for a job at my firm, I can't really use you, because I need lawyers that can hit the ground running, take depositions, argue motions, second chair a trial, and you don't have those skills. And how I developed those skills, when I left a big law firm, true story, I had the most amazing salary, which is probably like, what's the first year salary now, like 130?
$185,000 plus bonus.
Okay, I was underpaid, but.
Yeah, well, dollars are not quite what they once were,
So
but anyway.
whatever that would be comparable in that year that we're not talking about, I was making that. Great office, and to my family, I had died and gone to heaven.
Right.
Oh my God, you graduated from Harvard, you work at this big firm, you make all that money. And for me, it was a lot of money, and I was frugal. My first car was a 10-year-old car, my car note was $100. All my friends from Harvard were moving to LA, to the Santa Monica and the Marina and all these ritzy places. I lived in a tiny, tiny $400 a month apartment downtown. So I had a really small budget other than massive student loans. So when I left my firm, it was perfect because I didn't have a lot of debt. I hadn't gone out and splurged on a Porsche or Mercedes, which is in LA, it's kind of like your underwear, everybody has one. But I'm St. Louis, Midwest, didn't need it. So it was a good time for me to leave because I had financial freedom, which is so important. But I had to go out and learn some skills to be a lawyer in a small practice. And there was another Harvard lawyer who I went to work with, and I just traveled around with this guy who had been out on his own for a while, and he taught me literally how to practice law. I would go to court with him. He taught me how to try cases. So I wish there had been just more focus on after the first 5 years.
So that's a great way to end this, because that's our goal in these kind of talks, is to give you an idea of what life could look like after the first 2 or 3 or 4 years. If you go to our website, and there's been something circulating around that my terrific team here has circulated, you can sign up for, you'll get notifications of when we do these talks. We do career studies and reports. We've got a bunch of information on our website. But our goal really is, for those of you who are law students here or thinking about being a law student, is to see what the possibilities are in a career in law. And here's the thing, if you really pay attention and you are really willing to work hard, and you're willing to follow your own passions, and you're willing to prepare yourself and put yourself out there, then maybe you too could be like Areva Martin. Areva, thank you very much
Thank you, David.
for everything.